Something about Elias didn't sit right with her. How could he heal so effortlessly, so quickly? What was the source of his power? Her curiosity turned to suspicion when she noticed a strange pattern. For every life Elias saved, another person would fall ill. And it wasn't just the sick, it was the healthy, the strong, the ones who should have had nothing to fear. One by one, they began to die. In a quiet, forgotten town, death had become a part of daily life. Disease swept through the streets like an invisible predator, and people fell ill one by one. Families huddled together in their homes, praying for a miracle as the sickness took their loved ones with no mercy. It was a place where hope had been lost, where the constant threat of death hung heavy in the air. Doctors and healers had tried everything they knew, but nothing could stop the plague. The town was dying, and everyone knew it. Then, one fateful evening, as the sun sank behind the hills and the shadows lengthened, a stranger arrived. He walked into the town with a calmness that seemed out of place. His name was Elias, and he claimed to be a healer. He was tall and ageless, with sharp piercing eyes and hair streaked with grey. His skin was smooth, untouched by time, and his clothes were simple but spotless. There was something about him that made people stop and stare, unsure whether to trust him or fear him. Elias wasted no time. He spoke little, but his actions spoke for him. He went to the homes of the sick and dying, and with just a touch of his hand, he performed what seemed like miracles. The feverish awoke as though they had never been ill, and those on the brink of death were suddenly full of life. The townspeople were stunned. They had never seen anything like it. Elias moved from house to house, healing the sick, restoring hope where there had been none. At first, the town was filled with joy. People began to believe that their prayers had been answered, that Elias was some kind of angel sent to save them. They offered him food, money, and shelter, but Elias asked for nothing. He refused all gifts, only continuing his quiet work, saving lives as he went. But as the days passed, something began to feel wrong. Miriam, a young and dedicated doctor, had been fighting the disease from the beginning. She had seen too many people die and had watched in helpless frustration as Elias succeeded where she had failed. Yet, instead of feeling relief, a strange unease settled in her heart. At first, it was just a whisper of doubt. Something about Elias didn't sit right with her. How could he heal so effortlessly, so quickly? What was the source of his power? Her curiosity turned to suspicion when she noticed a strange pattern. For every life Elias saved, another person would fall ill. And it wasn't just the sick, it was the healthy, the strong, the ones who should have had nothing to fear. One by one, they began to die. Their deaths were sudden and unexplained, with no signs of the disease. Some were found in their beds, their faces frozen in expressions of terror, as if something had stolen the very life from their bodies. Miriam began to keep a secret journal, writing down every death, every healing, every strange occurrence. The pattern became clearer with each passing day. Elias wasn't healing the sick, he was transferring the sickness to others. He was stealing life, taking it from one person and giving it to another. But why? What was his true purpose? Determined to uncover the truth, Miriam began to follow Elias. She watched him as he moved through the town, and one night she decided to confront him. She followed him out of the town through the dark, foggy woods. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the twisted trees. The silence was broken only by the sound of her footsteps, carefully keeping her distance. Elias walked with purpose, moving deeper into the forest until he reached a clearing. Miriam hid behind a tree, her heart pounding in her chest as she watched him. In the center of the clearing, Elias stood still, his back to her, his hands raised to the sky. He began to chant in a strange ancient language. The air around him shimmered with a dark energy, swirling like a storm. Miriam's stomach twisted with fear as she realized what was happening. Elias was no mere healer, he was a creature sustained by dark magic. His immortality came at a terrible cost. He wasn't saving lives, he was taking them to feed his own endless existence. Her mind raced as she struggled to make sense of what she was seeing. Elias was a monster, and the sickness that had ravaged the town was his doing. He had drawn the disease to them, creating a plague that he could use to siphon life from the innocent. Every person he healed paid it with their life, or worse, with the life of someone they loved. Miriam's hand trembled as she clutched the journal that held all her notes. She knew she had to stop him, but how? Elias was powerful, far more powerful than she had ever imagined. And if she confronted him, what would happen to her? Would he kill her to protect his secret, or worse, would he steal her life, draining her of everything she was, just as he had done to so many others? The next morning, Miriam began her search for answers. She visited the town's oldest residents, the ones who had lived long enough to remember the past. One elderly woman, her voice shaky with age, told Miriam a story that chilled her to the bone. There was a man like him once before, the woman whispered, her eyes wide with fear. He came to our village when I was a child. He healed the sick, just like this one. But the deaths that followed, they said he was a curse. The old woman's words filled Miriam with dread. Elias had been in this town before, decades ago. He had walked this same street, healing and killing in equal measure. And now he had returned, bringing the same curse with him. Determined to stop him, Miriam spent days in the town's forgotten library, searching through dusty records and old books. Finally, she found what she was looking for, a journal written by a healer who had lived in the town long ago. The journal spoke of a ritual, a way to break the curse of immortality. But the price was deep. To stop Elias, Miriam would have to call upon the same dark forces that kept him alive. The ritual would tear his soul apart, trapping him in an endless cycle of death, unable to die but never truly living. Miriam's heart ached with the weight of her decision. Could she really condemn Elias to a such fate? The thought of his eternal suffering haunted her, but so did the faces of those he had killed. She had to stop him, no matter the cost. That night, Miriam returned to the clearing in the woods, the book of rituals clutched tightly in her hands. She had memorized every word, prepared herself for what was to come. The wind howled through the trees, and the moon cast long, airy shadows on the ground. Elias was there, just as she had known he would be. He stood in the center of the clearing, his dark magic swirling around him like a storm. His eyes met hers as she stepped into the clearing, and for a moment the air was thick with tension. "You shouldn't have come here," Elias said, his voice cold and dangerous. Miriam's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't hesitate. She opened the book and began to recite the words of the ritual, her voice steady despite her fear. Elias' eyes widened in shock, then fury. He lunged toward her, but it was too late. The ritual had already begun. The air crackled with dark energy as the magic that had sustained Elias from centuries was ripped from his body. He screamed in agony, his body convulsing as the corpse was torn away. His skin, once smooth and ageless, began to wither and decay before her eyes. "You've doomed me," Elias gasped, his voice filled with pain and terror. "You've condemned me to an eternity of suffering." Miriam knelt beside him as his body crumbled, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had done. She had saved the town, but at a terrible cost. Elias' final words echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder that some choices come with unimaginable consequences. As the night closed in around her, Miriam knew that the town would never know the truth. They would remember Elias as a hero, not the monster he truly was. But she would never forget. The memory of this final scream, his eyes filled with terror, would haunt her for the rest of her days. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like and share. Bye bye.